All right, so you guys should see a PowerPoint presentation now. Do you see that? Nod your head for the people who have there. You do see it. We're good. Okay. Like I said, I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world. Like right now that I'm sharing the screen, I do not see. There it is. Okay, admit. Perfect. All right. So obviously everybody is feeling this right now. Our market is changing. And that's no surprise. They have been predicting this for quite some time now. Back in 2012, when the market started coming back, everybody was saying, oh, we're going to see another crash in 2018. And then 2018 came and went, well, it's going to be 2020. And then COVID happened. And some of us had our best year ever. So everybody's been predicting the crash, predicting it, and it just kept going up and up and up. And so obviously we know with the rates going up and things like that, it's definitely affecting, and of course, inflation. So we'll get into that a little bit. This is basically what I've put together. Dwayne and I have already been through a crash. We already know pretty much what works. And this is going to be going over some old methods, kind of with some new twist on it. These are things that can definitely get you business. So if you guys, some new people have come in, if you guys would just make sure you're muted, and I will unmute you guys. You guys can unmute at the end, and we can do some Q&A after the training. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the big question is the market crashing? So we're going to talk about current market conditions, home buying and selling trends, way to uncover business, ways to adapt to changes, and how to be successful in any market condition. So, I hear agents say all the time, oh, I love a buyer's market. I make good money in a buyer's market. Well, I hear other agents say, oh, I love a seller's market. I make good money in a seller's market. The reality is people need a place to live. They're always going to want to buy or sell. There's always going to be something going on in their life, something coming up, whether they're getting married, having another child, maybe the death of a spouse, maybe the children moved out and they're downsizing, job relocation. There's all kinds of things that cause people to have to buy and sell. We know that as realtors. People were buying homes back in the 80s when the interest rates were super, super high. So while it did slow things down temporarily, it's not going to bring us to a complete halt. So just remember, people are people. They need a place to live. They're always going to be buying and selling. So is business slow right now? Absolutely. I do speak with agents nationwide daily, and what I am hearing is unanimous. 2021 was their best year ever, and 2022 has been very slow. For those of you who've had a great year so far, congratulations. You haven't felt that yet. You may be in a really good market. You may have some really good systems in place. So that's good for you guys. Hopefully it continues for you. But for everybody else, this is going to really resonate. I'm hearing my listings are longer with less showings. I'm hearing I've had to reduce the price on my listings. I'm hearing buyers can't afford to buy right now because of the higher rates. So you're getting a lot of different things from different people, but what I'm hearing is this is happening nationwide, even in some of the areas where everything's supposedly hot right now. So I went to Zillow. I know it's a dirty word, but I went in and I looked at some things just to kind of see different markets. Are we all feeling the same thing? So this first example is a property in Destin, Florida. It's been on, they listed it for sale on February the 5th. It went pending. Oh, wait a minute. That was the previous sale. This obviously was a flip. July 25th, they listed it for $439. August the 8th, they dropped it to $429. So this was, we're talking roughly 2 weeks. It was on the market, and I live in the Panhandle of Florida, so I know personally this was a really good buy, especially for Destin. So that's concerning to see even a $10,000 price drop like that. Then here's another property. Dwayne and I were in Nashville, Tennessee for 17 years. That's where we built our business. That's where we had our office and our team. And I'm very familiar with this area of Nashville. So this property sat on the market. Let's see, did I get that? Oh, for some reason it's blocking that right now. Maybe if I go back and back again. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing I'm seeing, but it's like it's black and white down here at the bottom. It's not letting me see. So going off of memory, this has been on the market about 2 weeks now. Again, they did a $10,000 price reduction. I just jumped all over the US because I wanted to have a good, a good mix of homes and just to kind of see this is going on in multiple regions and areas. So San Antonio, Texas, $259,000 price point. You would think, wow, that shouldn't be sitting there. There must be something wrong with this house, right? Well, I looked at the pictures and I didn't see, let's see here. Let me make sure I'm letting everybody in. Okay, there we go. So that should not be sitting. I looked at the pictures and everything looked fine with this property. They did a $30,000 price cut. They listed it originally for on July the 14th for $290,000, and and it sat for a month, and they reduced it by 30. Now it does look like there's some they were trying to maybe possibly rent it as well, and they removed that, and now they put it back on the market with a $30,000 price cut. Anaheim, California. So some of you guys are in those areas where your price point's higher. You're over $500,000. So this just, here's another example. Anaheim, California. They listed this property on July the 22nd for $1,150,000. 2 weeks, they did a price adjustment, dropped it down to $1,098,000. And just last week, they did another price drop down to $1,025,000. So they've dropped this property $125,000 since the end of June. Moving on. Winchester, Virginia. This property was listed on April the 15th for $600,000. Now they may have been overpriced to begin with. Some people do get greedy, but now they're all the way down to $499,000, $999,000. So they've dropped it $100,000. And then over here, Rochester, New York, again, listed it back in May, and they did a price drop of $499,900 in June, and still it doesn't show pending. Doesn't mean that they didn't update it, but this one's on the water and it's huge. It's 3,100 square feet. So go ahead. I don't know if you guys are able to comment or not, if you've got that option, but let me know in the comments. Are you guys seeing price drops in your area? Are your listings sitting longer? And are you seeing price drops in your area? Go ahead, and if you can, not the ones who are driving. And I will see if I can see those comments. And then we'll keep moving on. Oh, wow. Lots of comments coming in here. So yes, everybody's saying yes. Oh, thank you, Annette. I just saw your comment that I look fabulous. I've been trying to eat good, girl. Thanks. David, Michelle, yes. Barbara, for sure. Yes. So everybody is seeing it and you're feeling it. John, price reductions and days on the market are longer. Yes. Austin, Texas. Okay. So I'm not losing my mind. It is, Shirley says we are also seeing foreclosures, and I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit later on, because that's actually, I heard some very disturbing news about foreclosures from someone in the mortgage business. And I think you guys are going to be shocked. Well, maybe not. Nothing shocks us anymore, right? Connie and Mary, yes, you are all seeing that. Okay, so moving on, let's get into the meat of this. So when Dwayne and we got started in the business, it would have been like around, I want to say it was 2001. It was, if you could fog a mirror, you could buy a house. The interest rates, I want to say they were like 6.5, and they were creeping down a little bit. So 6.5 sounded great to me. I know when he bought his first house in 2000, I think he was at 7% on his interest rate. So those were not unheard of rates. That wasn't a big deal to us. That was just the norm. So then May of 2006, May, June, July, that whole that second quarter of 2006, we were crushing it. I remember our best month ever was August of 2006. We made $90,000 in gross commissions. Now that was in 2006 when the average home price in our market was like 150,000. So that would be 3 times that price point now. So that would be like making $270,000 in gross commissions today. So to put it in perspective, we had an amazing month. And then something really crazy happened. In September of 2006, that is when some of those arms due on those LIBOR exchanges. And what you started seeing were people starting to default on their mortgages. All of that bad paper that the loan officers had written for the previous 5 years was starting to all come to a head. Now everybody says the crash happened in 2007. We felt it third quarter of 2006. So that's when Dwayne and I were like, who turned off the faucet? We had our best month ever in August, and September of 2006, we had our worst month ever. And we got scared. We were very scared. We were young, early 30s, and we'd never seen anything like it. And so, and it got worse from there on out. So we had to hunker down and we had to reinvent ourselves. So a lot of the stuff that I'm going to tell you tonight is what we had to do to survive the market. And we knew this day would come. And I'm just so glad that we're in a position to help people and actually share this information with you guys. Now, if for some reason anybody needs to jump off, you've got kids to take care of, you've got something you've got to do, we are going to post this. It's going to be in the replay, and I am going to share this PowerPoint so you don't have to do screenshots or write down everything, because we are going to share all that with you guys. The history does repeat itself. So while it's a different cause this time, history does tend to repeat itself. So basically what's causing it now, we had the COVID restrictions. There's that that ripple effect from that. Now we've got inflation. We've got buyer fatigue. A lot of buyers are like, I'm tired of the multiple offer situation. Well, now the rates went up and they're like, forget it. We're not buying a house. You've got seller greed, higher interest rates, higher lumber costs, which that has come down. I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. And then you've got increased wages for the crews, the people out here building the houses. So people don't want to show up to work for $15 an hour anymore. So they're having to pay them more. So that makes the cost of everything go up. So the housing crashes can be detected by the supply of lumber. So there's so many different experts out there, and they're talking about, the 10-year note and all these different things tied to the stock market and all these things. And so while some of them sound good in theory, I learned a long time ago from an old dog in the industry. I won't name his name, but he told me, he said, Amanda, you want to know when the market crashes? Look at the cost of lumber. And I was like, I guess that makes sense, because if the cost of lumber goes down, that means supply went down. Nobody's building houses. And he says that is your first indicator that you're heading for a crash. So this little article here, I follow a lady, it's on madisonsreport.com. And if you guys want these links, I'll get all these links to you later as well. So she goes into great detail and she monitors this stuff, and she put out a report on August the 10th. As July waned, lumber prices remained flat, but players warned that muted demand and ample supply could mean lower prices on the horizon. Field inventories were strong, and transportation issues, while still frustrating, were getting worked out. So this isn't a transportation or employment issue anymore. A lot of these, politicians and news anchors want to blame it on nobody wanting to work and truck drivers not being able to transport goods. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that the builders aren't ordering it anymore because they've got inventory sitting. And the reason they have inventory sitting is, number one, mainly the interest rates, but everything else combined. So what am I saying? Am I saying a crash is imminent? I wouldn't call it a crash. I would call it a course correction. And let me let these people in. The raising of the interest rates was basically the brakes on this out of control train. And had they not raised the rates, the train would have crashed and it would have hurt everyone much worse. So no one wants the market to slow down, especially us realtors. Things are going so well, right? At least for the listing agents anyway. Listings are flying off the shelf. So why did they have to go and raise the interest rates? It's simple. You guys were selling yourselves out of a job. It was just a matter of time before the prices got so high that no one could afford to buy. And then something inevitable is going to happen. You know, people go through all kinds of things in their life. They lose jobs, a spouse passes away, they get a divorce. There's reasons that force people to sell, and it would have caused a crash inevitably, and the market would have been flooded with foreclosures. And it still might. And it very, very likely will be, but maybe not as bad as it would have been had it kept going. So what's the solution? I'm going to give you guys 10 different solutions to the housing slowdown. And not all will apply, but some will. So do take note, because each transaction is different, and some transactions may require one or more of these strategies or techniques. You can combine some of these. So I've broken it down into 4 different categories. I call it limb, like you're going out on a limb, aka limb. And that's going to be loan programs, investing or investors, marketing, and outside of the box categories. All right. So we're going to start with the first one, which is loan programs. So the first 2 strategies are going to fall under this umbrella. And while most buyers are shopping for a house, the ultimate deciding factor on what they end up buying comes down to the loan program and the rate they end up obtaining. I didn't put this in the training, but I do want to make a caution or a footnote here. You may have some lenders out there trying to get creative, and that's a good thing, but please do not let your clients get into an ARM or adjustable rate mortgage or an interest only loan or anything like that with the hopes that they can refinance in 2 to 3 years. Because if the rates don't go down and the housing market continues to go down like it did in 2006 and 7, they're going to be stuck, and that's going to cause more foreclosures. So a lot of lenders are like, oh, well, don't worry about the 30-year. I know it's high. Let's put them in this product because it's got an interest rate that's lower. That's going to hurt them down the road, and that's going to set them back, and it's actually going to hurt everybody in the end. So the 2 programs that I'm talking about are going to be fixed. This is going to be 30-year fixed loans. So I'm talking about buying down the rate and renovation loans. So buying down the rate. Has anybody ever heard of this before? For some of you who've been in the business a while, you know what I'm talking about. If we've got any loan officers on the call, I know you know what I'm talking about. Shirley says she's done it personally.
I have.
Awesome. Yeah. So some people don't. Oh, I just saw Jane says her first rate in the 80s was 14%. Hello, right? Like these are not the lowest, these are not the highest rates ever. So a lot of you have heard of how this works. So some of you may have done that on your personal property. Some of you may have facilitated that on a transaction. Awesome. Tony did that with your last listing. Perfect. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. I typed all this up, assuming that people didn't know what it was, because we do have some newer agents that have been in the business less than 10 years that probably have never had to do this. So buying the interest rate down has always been an option, but most consumers did not want to fork out 1% of the purchase price to do so, since the interest rates were already historically at an all-time low. So buy downs have been used for years to bring the rate and the payment down for the consumer. This is a great way to get a buyer into a home they otherwise would not debt ratio for. So I literally had a friend of mine reach out to me. She's in another area, so I wasn't representing her on the transaction. And she's like, Amanda, we don't qualify for this house. We thought we made enough money, but we've got this and this on our credit where we co-sign, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, talk to your loan officer about buying down the rate. And I explained to her what that was. They were able to negotiate with the seller to pay the rate down 0.5 point, rather than the seller, going and putting it back on the market and paying another month's mortgage and potentially having to lower the price. They had a live buyer on the hook, so they bought the rate down, and it was just enough to get her under that threshold. So she did qualify. So this can be a lifesaver for some of your deals. And it really comes down to the debt ratio. Most of you know what that is, but for those who don't know what the debt ratio is, it's just a simple formula. It's a percentage of debt that the consumer owes and what they can still bear. So it goes off of how much they make, how much they owe, and the lender says, okay, for this particular loan program, we want to see a debt ratio of 33% or less, or 38% or less. I've seen them go as high as 50%, but again, that was back in the day. So moving on to the rest of buying down the rate. So how does buying down the rate work? So different loan programs are going to be different. I'm using an example here where 1% buys down the rate 1/4 point. Different loan programs are going to be different, but this is pretty standard. So for example, on a $400,000 purchase price, it's going to cost the consumer about $4,000 to buy the rate down 0.25%. Now, when you first hear that, you're like, ouch, $4 grand. And it's the same as you go up, 8,000 to buy it down 0.5 point, 12,000 to buy it down 0.75, 16,000 to buy it down just 1%. So you're like, why would somebody take $16,000 out of their pocket to buy the interest rate down 1 point? That doesn't sound like it would be a good deal at first. So we're going to look at the example in a little bit more detail. So this, again, we're sticking with this $400,000 purchase price. We're assuming that they're going conventional, doing the minimum 5% down on a 30-year fixed. Let's just say that today's rate was 6%. I know it keeps going up and down. So, let's just assume it's 6%. That principal and interest payment would be $2,281.63 per month. Now, if they bought that rate down, let's see, I just thought I heard somebody come in and I don't see it. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm not leaving people in the waiting room. So if they buy that rate down 1/4 point, down to 5.75%, it lowers their payment by $60 a month. So it'll take them 66 months to break even. So roughly a little over 5 years, 5.5 years. So, that's a question you're going to want to ask them. Do you plan on being in this house a while? If so, it may benefit you to buy this rate down. 5.5%, if they pay 0.5 point, buy it down 0.5 point, it's going to save them $120 a month, still about 5.5 years to break even. Buying it down to 5.25 saves them almost $180 a month. Buying it down to 5% saves them $238 a month. Now, if you've got somebody with a DTI problem, this can be your solution. Oftentimes it can. Now, if they're that far out and that doesn't help them, then they're just going to have to pay something down or try to get a raise or something, because buying it down 1 point usually will solve the problem. But the best part is, and some of you probably already know this, the seller can pay for the buy down as an incentive. Now, when you guys saw my previous examples where sellers were dropping their prices $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, so they are literally throwing that money out the window. It's not benefiting them or the buyer in that case when they do a price reduction. So this is a great incentive that the seller can offer to the buyer instead of doing a price drop. They can say, I'll pay up to 1% of the purchase price for your buy down, or however you want to word that. I'll pay up to $10,000 for a buy down for the buyer. And so what that does is it opens up properties to buyers that maybe they wouldn't have debt ratioed otherwise because of the higher interest rate. Now, most lenders have different guidelines, but most lenders will allow a seller to pay up to 6% of the buyer's closing costs. So this is going to be included in the closing costs. So these buy downs are going to be part of the lender fees and closing costs on your CD. So for every $4,000 in this scenario that the seller drops their price, they could actually afford to pay 0.25% to buy the rate down. It's going to save them money, and it's also going to lower the buyer's payment. So in the previous example, the seller could have offered to pay the buyer's rate down 0.5 point, and it would only cost the seller $8,000. So this is going to lower the buyer's payment $120 a month. And if the seller had decided to do a price drop of $10,000 instead of offering the incentive, then they would have made $2,000 less on the house. And not only that, the price drop isn't what's getting that buyer, getting it into the buyer's, range of payment. Because in that case, if a seller drops the price $10,000, yeah, that's going to save that buyer about $57 a month on their payment, where they'd probably rather have an $8,000 incentive and pay $120 less. So it's really all how you frame it. It's how you educate your buyer, how you educate your seller. And sometimes you've got to educate the other agent, because you may have an agent who's brand new, who maybe they've only been in the business 2 or 3 years and they've never heard of this. They could be on either side of the transaction. So it's just, we're going to have more conversations than we did before. We're going to have to work a little bit harder now. So we're just going to have to think outside of the box. And don't forget, with your sellers, they may be able to write off the closing costs, the buy down on their taxes, depending on what tax bracket they're in. They may be able to write that off, where they're not going to be able to write off a price drop. So buy downs help everyone. So if you would like a mortgage calculator to calculate the difference in the rate, because I like to go in and I like to play around, like, well, if we get that rate down to this, what's the payment going to be? If we get the price down to this, you can go in and play with that. I've got a really good one that I use. It's not tied to some lender who's trying to gather information. It's mortgagecalculator.org. That's also going to be in that list, those links. So you can pay down for the buyer. You can pay for the buy down for the buyer too. You have to get creative, because you're not taking it out of your commission. You're actually doing it in a form of a reduced commission on the listing. So you can do this no matter what side you're on. So if you stand to make 3% on a $400,000 property, and the only thing that's standing between you and your commission is a DTI problem, why wouldn't you reduce your commission to make the deal happen? So instead of making $12,000 on the deal, you make $10,000. So the way this works, for those of you who've never done things like this before, you have to get the listing agent. Now, you might be the listing agent in this case, or you might be the buyer's agent, but the listing agent would have to agree to this, and the seller too, for that matter. So let's say it was a 6% listing, and the seller's like, I'm not paying for the buy down, but you as the buyer's agent, you're willing to take a reduced commission to make it happen. So at that point, what happens is the listing agent redoes the listing contract at 5%, and you get 2. And then the seller does actually pay it on paper. So that way, their check ends up being the same. You just want the math to work out the same for the seller. But you have to do it legally that way. That's the legal way to do it, by reducing commission. Now, I personally don't like to do that unless it's the last resort, because I'm worth every penny of my commission. But sometimes you do have to get creative. And at the end of the day, it helps the seller, it helps the buyer, and both agents get paid, and you move on to the next deal and you make it up somewhere down the line. So in a market conditions like this, you do have to get creative sometimes. So now, renovation loans. This is another strategy that you can use. There's lots of properties out there that people, they're kind of getting overlooked because they need renovation. So a lot of people walking around, champagne taste on a beer budget. Well, now their budget just got sliced even further. So now they really have to consider these homes that need repairs, because that's all they can afford. And renovation loans do exist. A lot of people are unfamiliar with them. A lot of loan officers don't even know about them. You would be surprised at the loan officers that I've talked to when I asked them, do you guys do the FHA 203K, and they're like, what's that? So if your loan officer doesn't know how that works, find another loan officer because it is a very popular program. At least it used to be, and it still exists, and it didn't go away. It just was no longer a tool in our tool belt that we used on a regular basis. So the way it works is, it's going to be like a standard FHA loan. There are some overlays and things. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but just to kind of give you some basics. If the house needs like structural repairs, like foundational type repairs, that's going to be considered a full 203K. That's going to have a lot more underwriting guidelines and things, hoops and things you got to jump through. But you can actually borrow more for the repairs because it's a full 203K, whereas the streamlined 203K, you can only borrow up to $35,000. And again, that's all going to go into there's going to be some factors involved, like the appraised amount before repairs and after. And the appraisal is going to be a little bit different. It will cost a little more because they have to do, the appraiser has to do more, because he has to go into estimated cost of repairs and things like that. And you will have to get a contractor to give you quotes, and the contractor will get paid in draws outside of closing. And certain, milestones have to be hit before they get that next draw, and only that contractor can be paid outside of closing. So a good loan officer who's done the FHA 203K loans before is going to know exactly what you're going to need. If he's going to be able to look at that property and go, oh yeah, we could do this one qualifies. Ooh, that one's going to be tough, that needs a little much and they're asking too much. Or he'll be able to put his eyes on it and let you know if it's a viable option. But I do know a couple loan officers. If you don't know someone that does it, I do know several that do. Investors. So this is that other part of LIM, that category of 4 different categories. So investors, and I'm going to take a little water break right here. Let me check the chat real quick, see if anybody's got any questions. We are members with you guys. Can we get the slides? Yes, Tony, we're going to give the PowerPoints to everybody on the training tonight. And oh, cool. Shirley just found out about a loophole with FHA. You can have up to $10,000 for appraisal repairs without it having to be 203K. So there's lots of cool little programs out there like that. So a good loan officer is going to be able to tell you about that. So it sounds like you got a good loan officer there, Shirley. That's good to help you get through these times, because they're the ones that are going to have to get creative. They know it too. When the rates went up, they felt before we did. All right, so investors, there are 2 main ways to work with investors. There's lots of ways, but the 2 main ways that I'm going to talk to you about tonight, these are going to be your easiest ways. A lot of investors are dumping their properties right now because they feel like they've hit the ceiling. I literally talked to an investor in my area the other day, small time investor, just has 3 properties. And I asked him, so why are you selling? And he goes, well, we bought low and we can sell for a pretty good price right now. And, we're not really, we thought we wanted to be landlords, but we don't think we want to be landlords anymore. So we're just going to go ahead and sell before the market crashes, because a lot of people think it's going to crash, right? So this is a great time for the larger investors to swoop in and grab up some deals, and they're happy to buy any and all properties that meet their criteria. So working with an investor can be lucrative, and it can provide a steady stream of income. So how do you find offline properties for investors? So there are lots of ways to find offline properties. My favorite is a letter campaign. My second favorite is postcards. They work well. They always have. So you'll need to know, and woohoo, I got scroll happy. All right. So you'll need to know what the investor is looking for. Do they have a max price per property? Do they have a minimum age requirement for the home? Are they interested in the suburbs only? Are they open to condos or other types of properties besides single family homes? Are they looking for a certain square footage or size home? See, these investors are super excited right now. They're like, oh, yes, prices are coming down. We're not having to fight with, home buyers anymore. We can swoop in and get these properties. So this may be a good time for you to switch over to working with investors. So once you've identified your investors' criteria, then you can decide on what part of the MLS coverage area you want to send the letters to. I personally pick a subdivision that I know is going to meet the investors' criteria, and I send a letter to everybody in there. And I always handwrite the address on the front of the envelope. It has been proven. It's a psychological thing that people will open a handwritten on the front. They're going to open that before they'll open anything else because they think it's personal to them, and it is. You're actually trying to get them some money, right? You're trying to sell their house. So what do you say in the letter? So this is a sample letter. It will be in the course. I'm going to upload all of this into the course. So dear so-and-so, use their actual name. The market is changing fast, and a lot of homeowners are selling their homes to take advantage of the increase in equity. I have an investor that I am personally working with right now, and he is willing to buy homes in your area that meet the following criteria: 20 years or newer, 1,500 plus square feet, 350,000 or less. So your investor criteria might be different, depending on your market. So if it's California, it's not going to be $350,000. It's going to be more like 800,000 or more. But you can customize these letters to you. If you've thought about selling, I would love to mention your home to him and let him know what the asking price you would like. So you can text or call me and put your phone number and let me know what that price is. He can close as fast or as slow as you need him to. If you need to find another property, I can help you do that as well. So a lot of times when you send these letters out and they are willing to sell to an investor, you do get the buy side. You do get to go and find them a house. So that's cool. You actually get 2 transactions out of it. He is only buying a few properties per month, and I'm getting a lot of responses from the letters I have been sending out. I'd love to let him know about your home if you're interested in selling. Thank you for your time, Amanda Roberts. And I put, you put your information. So normally I'm going to send out at least 100 of these. And you will get a lot of responses. The last time I sent letters out, I actually sent them out looking for land, and I had almost half of the people respond. Half. I mean, that was unheard of. And they were like, yeah, we'll sell. You got somebody? We'll sell. So it's a really good way to drum up some business, especially if you're working with investors. So how do you find the investors? This is the easy part. This is totally the easy part. So the best place to find investors is in Facebook groups. It's never been easier. So here are some examples of investor Facebook groups. So when you go to your Facebook and you type in the little search bar for groups, you go, on that left side and you click groups, and there's a search bar that pops up. Type in your city or your county or your state or whatever, because like I live in Florida and I'm a woman. So these are the things that automatically popped up for me: women real estate investors, Ren of Nashville. That's a group that I've actually gotten a lot of business out of that group because we were in Nashville for so long. Women real estate investors worldwide, South Florida real estate investors group. So it's going to pull up, Facebook knows where you live. They know everything about you, sadly, right? Like they know everything. They know more about us than we know about ourselves. And they're going to give you suggestions for your area and basically things that you like. And you'll see here, I've got a lot of mutual friends in these groups. So if you've got other friends in real estate who are part of these groups, those are going to pop up first also. So what do you say in the Facebook group to attract the investors? So here's a sample post I did. I work in the Destin, Florida area, and I'm uncovering off-market properties that would make great investments. Are there any investors in this group that are looking in my area? Message me your criteria and I'll see what I have. Might be a good fit. So investors, they've got feelers out there with everybody. They've got agents upon agents looking for stuff for them. And most of those agents are clueless and have not found them anything. And quite honestly, the agents have already forgot about the investor. So if you're serious about doing this and you find a property for an investor and they buy it, chances are the next time you come up with something, they're going to buy that too. So I had this happen with an investor in Nashville. I found him a property. It was actually 3 doors down from where I lived. He bought it. So then I ended up selling him the house right next door to it. So once you start pushing that domino with that investor and you kind of get a feel for their process and what they're looking for, you can find even more properties for them. So what do you say when an investor responds? So here is a sample Facebook message. So they're going to reply to you through Messenger usually. This is the investor. I saw in the investor group that you uncovered some offline homes in the Destin, Florida area. I buy in that area. Yes, I do. Thanks for reaching out. What are you looking for? I'm looking for 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,500 square feet or more, no more than 20 years old, no condos, single family homes only up to 450,000. You got anything like that? And then I say, not at the moment, but I get properties like that all the time. I can put my feelers out and find you some that meet that criteria. What's your time frame? We buy 8 to 10 properties a month, no time frame. Cha-ching. He buys 8 to 10 a month. I'm gonna go to work for this guy. Cool. What's a good email address where I can send you homes I find? He gives me his email. Great. I'll send you what I find. What's a good cell number so I can let you know sooner? Cell phone. Thanks. I'll let you know when I find something that meets your criteria. So you want to get name, email address, phone number, and their criteria. So if you send out 100 letters trying to find properties that meet this investor's criteria, and you uncover 3 or 4 and you come back to him and he doesn't want any of them, that's okay. You just uncovered 3 to 4 properties that you could turn around and post in the investor group and say, hey, I've got some properties and this is their criteria. Never give the address or the client's name or anything like that, because they'll come in and they'll go and swoop it out from under you. But it's never going to hurt you to send those letters out trying to drum up that business, because even if this investor doesn't want it, somebody else will, even if you list it on the MLS for everyone to see. So just one off-market property per month is going to make you good money. So even if your average home price is on the low end, and let's say it's 300,000, you're going to make 18,000 because you're actually making 6% on this deal as a facilitator, since you found the property and you're representing the investor. So different states have different rules on this. In Tennessee, it's called dual agency. They do not allow that, but they will allow you to step down into a facilitator position, which basically means you're just pushing paperwork for everybody. You're not negotiating prices or anything like that. Now, if you're uncomfortable with being a facilitator, at that point, maybe you find somebody in your office that doesn't mind representing maybe the sell side on that for 1% or whatever, kind of like a referral fee. And you're basically, handling everything else. You're handling inspections and setting up closing or whatever, part of the transaction you want to handle. So there's several ways to slice that. But in this instance, there is no other agent involved unless you pull them in, and that's going to be up to you and your broker and based off of your state guidelines. So let's say your average home price is 400,000 and you do one of these a month, you're going to make $264,000 a year in commissions if you don't bring another agent in. So you can make a good living just representing investors and sending out letters. This one technique, this is what some of my agents in my office, that's all they did was this one technique. And most investors, when you get in good with them and you start, you're consistent with your letters. And some people send out more letters because it's all about numbers. It is a numbers game. So if you send out 200 letters, in theory, you're going to get more responses. So it's all about how much time and energy you want to put into that. Some of you have assistants. I would put your assistant on that. So that's something that you don't even have to do if you don't want to. So you can also uncover potential properties for your investors in the Facebook group. So don't assume because you find an investor in a Facebook group that they're in all Facebook groups. So join them all. Now, don't do it all at once. I'm sure you guys have learned that. Anybody who's been in our, who's a client of ours that has our course, we tell you do not do that. Don't join, 50 groups in one day. You're going to get put in Facebook jail. but you could go in and you can join these Facebook groups, you know, a couple of Facebook groups a day. Go in and just kind of look. You can go into the search bar and type in your city or your state and see what's coming up in those areas. And maybe you find something that another agent posted in one of those groups. Hey, any investors looking for this? I've got this property. Well, now that matches your investor. So here's another post that I did. Hey, is anyone looking to sell any properties in the Destin, Florida area? I have an investor looking up to $600,000 for just about anything. Let me know what you got. Thanks. So if somebody has a property like that, or they know one that's coming up, obviously they're going to be on the sell side and you would be on the buy side representing the investor. So it would just be, you know, like a normal transaction. You don't have to bring another agent in, but you're still going to make 2 to 3% on that deal just because you did a random post saying, hey, what you got? Now, does it uncover something every time? No. But if you're kind of sitting there and you're like, oh, I really need some business, I don't know what I need to do. These are little things that you can do throughout the day and throughout your week to drum up business. So that third category, marketing. So all of this really falls into the category marketing, but I'm talking about specific niche marketing. And these are the 4 that I recommend in the current market conditions. Mainly because these are going to uncover those have-to sales. So there's so many ways to market yourself, and you do have to get creative when the market shifts like it has. So these 4 are going to be divorce campaigns, estate sale campaigns, garage and estate sales, and double wide dealers. Some of y'all just rolled your eyes. It's okay. You don't have to do double wides, but I'm telling you, some of these other areas like rural Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. There's a lot of rural areas and people are buying double wides. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that here in a second. So let's start with the divorce campaigns. This has actually gone up. The divorce statistics are worse than they were the last time I looked them up. I was like, ooh, COVID really did a number on people. So the nationwide statistics show that 45% of marriages end in divorce. That's the first marriage. The second marriage, 67%, and the third marriage was like over 80%. We won't get into the whys of that. Just know there's a lot of people out there getting divorces, and over half of these couples own a home. And now you're finding a lot of people that didn't get married who are buying homes together and they split up and they still need to sell a home. And that's not even in these statistics. So we're just going to go off the statistics alone. That's roughly 400,000 homes a year that most likely will need to be sold due to a divorce. So often the home needs to be sold because either one of them can afford the home alone. They qualified for that home based on both of their incomes, and neither one of them can qualify to refinance it into their name alone. So how do you find them? You can use methods in the course to find those who have filed for divorce. It's under the personalized marketing books. It's going to look like this right here, that little blue tab. There's lots of books there. That one of the very first ones is divorce. There's several different books, and you've also got the step-by-step instructions. You don't have to send them a book. You can send them a letter. You can send them a postcard. We've gotten the books down below $3 a piece now, and they are personalized to you. So those are a great tool to use. NAR has some really good data and statistics too, and the different types of buyers and reasons sellers are selling, including divorce. So you can check that out at this link here. Really, really good data. If you like statistics and data, you will love this PDF. It's very long and very detailed. So that's going to be in that link, that list of links that I'm going to send you guys. Estate sale campaign. So the majority of heirs that inherit a home do plan on selling it. Some of them do keep the property, but most just sell it. They just want to be done. So typically it will go through probate, and the proceeds will need to be needed to pay debts. But one way to find these type of homes is through a probate attorney. So you may think, oh, well, a probate attorney already has a realtor they're working with. Yep, they may have a realtor they're working with, but maybe they're annoyed by that realtor, or maybe that realtor has relocated to another area of the country and now they don't have a good one, and the one that they're using now really doesn't know what they're doing. or, maybe they need more realtors to help them. So never assume that they already have it all figured out. So you can also uncover them through other methods. I'm not going to go into great details. You can also find that in the course under the personalized marketing books as well, under Inherited Homes. This is a sample of one of the books. You can customize it. You put your image and your name there. Garage sales. So go ahead, everybody laugh. My husband, he laughs at me because I literally sometimes I trip on business and trip on ways to get business. Sometimes I get these crazy harebrained ideas and they actually work. Well, I cannot take credit for this being like a premeditated marketing strategy. But I used to go to garage sales. I used to love going to garage sales with my kids and just looking for like antiques and really cool things. And we used to do this a lot, especially in my 30s. And I would just get into conversations naturally with people about their house, because I'm a realtor. That was my passion. And I would say, oh, I love your house. How long have you guys owned the house? 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Oh, have you ever thought about selling? Actually, yeah, that's why we're having this garage sale. We're thinning the house out. We're getting ready to sell it. Oh, really? Well, have you found a realtor yet? No, actually, we haven't got that far. Well, I'm a realtor. Really, are you? Yeah, let me give you my business card. And I have these conversations, and it got to the point where I had them enough that I thought, maybe these people that are having garage sales are getting ready to move. Maybe that's, maybe that is the main reason why they're doing it. I never thought about it. I thought some people are just cleaning out their junk and trying to pick up some extra cash. So I decided to test the theory, and I made a route one day, and I chose neighborhoods that I knew had nice houses. And I went around, and it was about, I think it was like roughly 15 or 16 garage sales that I went to. And I just decided whether I saw anything I liked at the garage sale or not, I'd buy something like $1, something for $1, so I could go up to the homeowner and have a transaction going on to have that conversation, because that's how it had happened naturally for me. And it worked. And I literally had this conversation at every single garage sale. And I would always uncover at least one, if not 2 or 3 people that were thinking about selling in the very near future. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this is what I would say to them. I would say, as I'm paying for the item, I would say things like, are you guys planning on selling your house anytime soon? And if they say no, I just thank them for the item, and then I go on about my day. But if they say yes, I say, well, what's got you thinking about moving? And then they just tell you all about it. Well, where are you moving to? A lot of them are staying in the same area, but some of them are moving out of state. And don't forget to get a referral, find somebody out of state for them to get that referral fee. So have you chosen a realtor yet? Oftentimes they say no, but sometimes they do have a friend that's a realtor and they say, yeah, my friend's a realtor, I plan on using them. If you want to try to still get that business, go for it. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. So if they say no, that they didn't have a realtor, then I give them my business card, which I just so happen to have in my pocket. Because now it's a strategy. I'm actually putting my business card in my pocket, not running out to the car and digging through my purse looking for one. And so at that point, I say, well, what's the time frame you're looking to move? Do you know how much you want to sell your house for? Have you thought about a price yet? And a lot of times they haven't, but they, sometimes they just spit a number out. We're not taking less than $500,000. Okay, sister, you got it down. And hopefully the house is worth at least that. And then the final question I ask is, would you like for me to give you a free home value analysis? It's going to let you know how much I think your home will sell for based off of the comparables in your neighborhood. And they usually say yes. And then at that point, that gives me that opportunity to ask for their email address. And then I tell them I'm going to send that to them. But then I say, also, what's your phone number so I can text you when I email that? Because I want to make sure you get it. They don't have a problem giving you their phone number, and keep a notepad with you. And then when you get back in the car, just make notes, write down the address because you're right there in front of the house. So write the address down. You've got their name and their email address now, and just whatever they told you about their up and coming move. And that way, when you go back to the office, you know, you may have multiple of these conversations and you don't want all that to blend together. So when you get back to the office, you're going to go ahead and prepare that comparative market analysis and email it to them. And then you're going to send a text message to confirm they received it. So here's a sample text. Hi, Mrs. Jones. This is Amanda Roberts with eXp Realty. It was great meeting you today at the garage sale. I just emailed your home's value to the email address you gave me. Let me know if you don't get it. And she says, thank you, Amanda. Yes, I did get that. Perfect. Let me know if you have any questions about that. And she says, will do. So then you're going to add them to your favorite CRM, because life's going to happen and you're going to forget about Mrs. Jones. And it sucks when you drive by that house and you see another agent signing in the yard. You're like, dang it, I forgot to follow up with her. I could have had that listing. And Dwayne he gets on me all the time when I forget to follow up. So put them in your CRM and make sure you follow up. If you don't have a CRM, we do offer one. It's got a lot of bells and whistles that a lot of other CRMs don't. I'm going to put in a little plug. It does a stealth voicemail drop where their phone never rings, but they get that voicemail notification and you've left a voicemail. We also have a feature where you can text them a video and it opens in their text messages just like it does in Messenger. It's not a link that they have to click. It's the actual video in their text message. So I don't know anybody else that does that. Now, step 4 through 50 is going to be follow up. So if she tells you she's moving in the next 3 months, cut that in half. That means they're moving in the next 6 weeks. They're going to list that house in the next 6 weeks, because everybody's timeline, once those wheels get to turning, it's going to speed up. There's going to be things that's going to accelerate that because people get impatient and they want it to happen faster. So don't wait till the 3-month mark to follow up with Mrs. Jones, because she's already listed and probably under contract. So just follow up, and you'll get that business. That's just a really neat way for you to get out and meet people and talk to people, and it's non-threatening, and they don't even realize that you're doing it on purpose. And you might find some cool stuff at the garage sale. So double wide dealers. So I grew up in the South, in the country, in case you guys can't tell with my accent. So every other house is a double wide. It's not a big deal for us. So when the market crashes, double wide dealers make serious money. They do very well in a slow market or a softened market. And there are several ways that you as an agent can capitalize on having a relationship with the double wide dealer. So if you have a seller who needs to sell, but they can't find an affordable place to live, a double wide can be an alternative solution. Now, sometimes people don't want to live in a double wide. They say, well, that's like a trailer. Have you seen them lately? Like, seriously, go to a double wide dealer and walk through some of these. They look like houses. They have come a long way throughout the years. So in most areas, a buyer can purchase a double wide home for under $100,000. Now, if a seller has lived in their house any length of time, they're going to have at least $100,000 in equity. But this does not include the land or the utilities. However, the double wide dealers do have special finance packages where they can kind of roll it all into one. And you can actually purchase a double wide with an FHA loan program. There's certain criteria the FHA does require, that it has a permanent foundation. It has to be anchored. The axles have to be removed. So there's certain criteria that FHA does require. So you can get someone in as little as 3.5% down. So you can find that land for them on or off market. So use the letter campaign if you don't find something on market that works. So different counties have different zoning requirements. So not all land is going to qualify for a double wide. So you do have to check into that. If you're not familiar with that, you can call your local tax office and just ask them, hey, which zoning codes indicate that a double wide can be property? And usually like agricultural, agricultural is a big one. So different tax records are going to show it different, but it's usually AG. Obviously, if it's in a subdivision with houses, especially in HOA, that's not going to allow for double wide. But the further out in the country you get, it's a pretty good chance. So You make a commission when you sell their existing property, and you make a commission on the land, not to mention you help solve a problem for your seller who's also your buyer. Other ways that you can benefit from working with double wide dealers is they often get asked by potential clients, do you have any land available? And sometimes they do, but oftentimes they don't. So if you can find land that will allow double wides and ask the owner if they'd be willing to sell, this can make you a quick commission as well. So also keep in mind, there are larger parcels with a lot of road frontage. You can get multiple double wides on it. So for example, a 2-acre tract that has 100 feet of road frontage, usually in most municipalities will allow you to divide that into 2 separate 1-acre tracts, as long as each tract will perk, and that can become 2 home lots. So a lot of double wide dealers will pay you to find the lots as well. So think of it like a buyer's commission. So you can negotiate with them once they realize that you can deliver, and you'll go out there. Maybe you can kind of, go out there and talk to some people and send out the letters and find people that are willing to sell land. Sometimes people are willing to break off an acre of land. Maybe somebody's got 50 acres and you're looking for somebody, a piece of land. They got a house to sell. They're going to do a double wide deal, but they can't find the land. Find somebody who's got a lot of acreage and say, hey, Mr. Jones, would you be willing to sell an acre of your land for 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever? You don't know what Mr. Jones is going through at that point in his life. And that extra 20 grand might make the difference of him losing his whole property. You don't know what situation he's in. And he might go, yes, absolutely. I would be happy to sell an acre of land to you. So you got to think outside the box, because at the end of the day, if you've got a seller who's got, let's say, a $400,000 property that they want to sell, and they've got, say, $200,000 equity, but they don't want to go and take out another mortgage. They've only got $200,000 to work with, and they're open to doing a double wide. And the only thing standing between the whole deal happening is you finding a piece of land. At the end of the day, you're going to make money off the land purchase, and when they sell their property, and you're going to solve a problem for them. So that's a great way to do it as well. So a lot of double wide dealers will pay you. It's kind of like a finder's fee. So you can kind of benefit from both sides of the transaction, and definitely use those letters. So you can tweak the letters. They work very well. People do respond very well to the letters. So outside the box thinking. Now, some of that was already outside the box. So you're really going to love this. You guys who've hung in this long, you're going to really love this last part. Has everybody got something so far that they didn't know or that they might want to try? That sounds good to them so far? Good. Shirley says yes. I'm just catching up on the comments here. Connie says there are mobile home parks and there are manufactured homes on land. I saw both in Oregon. Yeah, so that's a great idea too. If you're representing a seller and you don't want to fool with the land, they could always go into a park. Yep. Awesome. Thanks, Connie. Thanks, Loretta and Tori and Michelle. I appreciate the feedback. Sometimes, some of them are kind of simple ideas, but they work so well. And I honestly think some of the simpler things it's just easier to implement. And we do have to think outside of the box now that the market's shifting. And, at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make money and help people, right? Roxana, absolutely. I'm 3 months in and struggling. Michelle, yes, I'm meeting a buyer tomorrow to buy land for manufactured home. Perfect. So see, you're already implementing things. And now this is just confirmation that you're on the right path. So good way to think outside of the box, Michelle. Christian says yes. So, all right. So outside of the box thinking, there are lots of ways to generate real estate business using outside of the box thinking. I'm going to focus on these two because these two are the most relevant right now: foreclosures and lease purchases. So both methods work very well when the market crashes or softens. And I'm going to talk more details about how to find these and structure them. I saved this for last. Lease purchases, in my opinion, is the best strategy right now, and I saved that for last. So foreclosures, let's talk about that first. I do not claim to be an expert in foreclosures. I'm going to be quite honest with you. They can be a headache. Lots of paperwork, lots of loopholes. Dwayne is more of an expert on this. So if you guys want to learn more about that, maybe we can twist his arm into doing a training on it. He is the king of short sales and foreclosures. So you may be thinking that, well, it may be a while before foreclosures hit the market because so many homes sold so fast for top dollar, but this could be further from the truth. I actually spoke to a lender the other day. He said they had 8,000 foreclosures coming through for their personal bank last month, and they have over 20,000 coming on the books, estimated to come in next month. So it's already happening. And that's one lender, and that's not a big bank. That's not, Wells Fargo or Bank of America. That's just like a regular medium-sized bank. So these are some reasons why a home might go to foreclosure in this current market. Rather than them listing it and selling it and being out from under it, these are some reasons that I have discovered recently why people didn't sell. The homeowner fell on hard times and doesn't want to sell the house, and they hold on till the very end because of pride, and they lose the home to the bank. You've got this man who's lived in the house for 20 years. He lost his job. He did everything he could to try to save it. And he's like, I don't want to sell it. I'm not selling it. I'm going to sit right here till they kick me out. And it happens. And then another reason is the home needs so much work that the homeowner thinks no one will want to buy it. And they don't even try. They just decide to live there until the bank takes it. So both of these are going to be mindset issues. And then the third one, the homeowner gets sick or dies and no one was paying the bills or paying attention, and the bank takes it. And that's a really sad situation, because that could happen to anybody and you don't see it coming. Whereas the other two are mindset. And if everybody could just make sure, I know a lot of people come in midway, just make sure you're muted. And at the end, I'll have everybody, if you want to ask questions, and you can unmute yourself. So how do you find foreclosures? They are everywhere. These are just a few samples. So the most popular way to find closures is to go through HUD. You can go to HUDhomestore.gov. Here's what it looks like here on the right. You can type in your city, your state, your county, even your zip code, and you'll get a list of foreclosures. You can also find additional properties through the HUD.gov page. They've got it broken down, like VA loans and different programs out there. So they've got it broken down. Some of you may or may not know this, but your buyer can buy a VA foreclosure for as little as $100 down, and they don't have to be a veteran. So they get to take advantage of that wonderful veterans program, but that's only if it's a foreclosure. And you can find those under that HUD.gov link as well. You can also discover homes through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac by visiting homepath.com or homesteps.com. Again, all of these links are going to be in that PDF that I'm going to share with you guys, so you don't have to write these down. But these are just a few. So there are individual bank sites as well for Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, all the major holders. They are going to have their own site where you can go and search for homes. Now, if you'd like a complete list of the links I've shared tonight, just go ahead and comment links, and I'll make sure to share that with you guys. I'm sure you all want it, so let's just assume you all want it. I'll make sure you get that. When I put this together, I thought we were going to be Facebook Live. All right, so how do you structure foreclosure deals? So each site or lender is going to have their own process. So for me to sit here and try to explain that to you, honestly, this really needed to be a whole nother training. The foreclosure needs to be a completely different training. So as you can see with HomeSteps, there's an option for you to sign up. A lot of these sites are going to require you to sign up. So I would maybe do an email address that, Angie's foreclosure list at gmail.com. So everything that's coming through that email, that you sign up with that email, all of those are going to be your foreclosures. And that way you can go through and search the list for people that you're looking for. A lot of investors like to get foreclosures, people who flip and people who hold. So that's going to be a good tool for you to use if you decide to work with investors. But it is a lot of paperwork and hoops to jump through. But once you get the hang of it and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to need this, and this is the process, and this is how long it's going to take, and this could happen, and this could happen. But when it does, we're going to do this. So you kind of learn the flow, you get the hang of it. Then it's not that big of a deal. So again, like I said, Dwayne, he took on the task of learning this back when the market crashed the last time. He got really good at foreclosures and short sales. So he is a wealth of information. We do have some things in the course right now on that, but because of the market conditions that we were in, with it being a seller's market, we didn't put a lot of emphasis on that. So we are going to beef all that up. We're going to add a lot of stuff to the course over the next few months, hopefully to have all of that ready for our new launch in January. So everybody who's currently a student, you are grandfathered in. Everything that we add to the course, you get as part of your package. You do not have to pay an upgrade fee. If there's anybody watching this live, whether it's on the replay or on the Zoom call that's not, does not have access to the course, who's not currently a client of ours, now would be a good time, because we are going to go up on our price in January, because we are adding a lot of stuff to the course. Including the foreclosure stuff and the lease purchase stuff that I'm about to go over. So you can provide an actual list of foreclosed homes to buyers and then get them pre-qualified. So that way, when a foreclosure property that meets their needs arises, you can move forward quickly. So you can go ahead and say, okay, you're going to need X amount down. The lender says you can qualify up to this certain amount. So we're going to be looking at homes up to this certain amount. And then you can explain the bidding process and all that, because different sites have bids. So you want to go ahead and get them that list of homes, even though you know in the back of your mind, they've got a little bit of legwork to do before they can even look. But that's kind of how you get that business going with the buyers. And each site is going to have those requirements and steps to begin the process. So again, you're going to have some that have auctions. But once you go in and get familiar with those different foreclosure sites, then you'll know exactly what you're dealing with and the time frame and the loopholes and hoops you got to jump through. All right, so this is my favorite one. I've been waiting for the day to release this again. It has not been needed until now. So we still have a lot of people on. We have at least 40 people still on. So you guys are going to be glad you hung in here for this. So back in, let's see, 2010, they had, let's see, Obama, I don't remember when he offered the home buyer credit. I just remember when it expired. It expired at the end of April 2010. And then there was a flood in Nashville 2 days later. And between the $8,000 tax credit for buying a home going away and literally half of Nashville being flooded, mine and Dwayne's business literally dried up, no pun intended. So I literally sat there for 2 weeks like, what do we do? What do we do? Like, we're going to go bankrupt if we don't figure something out. Like, it was that bad, guys. And I just said, well, what's the problem? The problem is sellers can't sell for various reasons. Buyers can't buy now for various reasons. What if we like somehow match them together, work on the buyer's credit in the meantime, and get them qualified and baby step the deal? And I happen to be familiar with the lease purchase process because my father had actually, his house, he bought it owner financing. So this is going to be a little bit different than owner financing. I will go into more detail in the course on owner financing, but just in a nutshell, owner financing means the deed is actually in the buyer's name. It's no longer in the seller's name. Most sellers cannot do that because they have a mortgage. So that's why the lease purchase option works for them, because they can't deed the property over. Now I did have a guy in Nashville that owns several properties free and clear. And he did owner finance those. So though he, in essence, became the bank for 30 years, and they had every right to make that payment for 30 years and never pay him off. So that's owner financing in a nutshell. But lease purchase is a little bit different. So a lease purchase or a lease to own or a lease option can be beneficial for the seller, the buyer, and the agents involved. So a lot of agents think that they cannot get paid until the house closes and the seller, deed gets conveyed from seller to buyer and all that, and then commissions get paid out by the title company off the CD, blah, blah, blah. That's only partly true, because you can actually make money on a lease purchase in the beginning and when it closes. I was the only person doing this in Nashville, and I got deemed the lease purchase queen there for a little bit. I literally had like agents coming out of the woodwork asking me, what are you doing? How are you finding the houses? How are you structuring the deals? I'm like I'm gonna tell you. But I can tell everybody now, right? Because I'm a real estate coach. I can tell you guys how it works. So it is a little tricky on structuring the deal, because you want to be able to cover all bases and keep everyone's best interest in mind. You don't want it to be, sideways, because that's how you get sued. So sellers couldn't buy and buyers couldn't buy. Sellers couldn't sell and buyers couldn't buy, and sellers wanted to sell, and in some cases they needed to sell. So this was a golden opportunity for buyers with less than perfect credit to have a second chance. So this is how it works. You write up a contract to buy, just like you normally would, just like they were closing 30 days from now. You'd write it up just like that, except the closing date is not 30 to 45 days out. It's 2 years out. So you go 2 years out from today. That's the only difference in the contract. There's no time limit on a contract, right? It's whatever the seller and the buyer's willing to agree to. So that's what you do. That's how you write the purchase side of it. It keeps it clean. There's no verbiage in it about lease to own or option money or nothing. You just have a straight up purchase contract with a purchase date 2 years out. Now set that aside. That's agreed to. Now what you do on the second side of things is you do a rental agreement for 2 years. This is the cleanest way to do it. There used to be lease purchase contracts, and it just got ugly. There's too many overlays. So you keep the two contracts separate. You got the purchase contract and you've got a rental agreement. Your rental agreement is for 2 years. So that way the seller and the buyer are very clear. You're going to rent my house for 2 years, and I'm going to give you the option to buy it in 2 years at this price under these terms. So you've got two separate agreements, keeps it very clean. But you need to do an addendum to both contracts. And the reason you do the addendum is because when you go to do the loan in 2 years, the lender does not like to see this, that they do not like to see that this person lease purchased for 2 years. They don't mind that they rented for 2 years, don't care. They don't like lease purchases. I don't know why. It's the same difference, but it just keeps it cleaner this way. It's not against the rules to do it, but this way everything's very clear. So you do addendums that address the option money. So the option money, so in essence, what you're doing is the seller is saying, I am giving you the option to buy this property at this price in 2 years. I'm not going to sell it to anybody else. I'm taking it off the market. I'm going to let you live in the house for the next 2 years. But in order for me to do all this, you're gonna have to put some skin in this game. You're gonna have to put 3 to 5% down. I've even seen some sellers say, I want 10% down, or they set an exact amount like 10 grand or 15 grand or whatever, because that's a big deal for a seller to pull their house off the market and hold it basically for somebody for 2 years. So you can go off of today's purchase price, or you can estimate a purchase price into the future. I don't like banking on a 3% appreciation, especially in a market where a seller has to resort to this, because that tells me that we're in a buyer's market. So typically you have to be mindful of that when you're coming up with a purchase price. So the option money, again, if you're going off of the 3 to 5%, it is non-refundable. You write it up as non-refundable. It is not earnest money. This is not the same as earnest money. So if you need to do some earnest money on that, if you need to do earnest money on your purchase contract, do something simple like $50 or $100, and that will get held in escrow. That's fine. That's earnest money. But when we're talking about the option money, that's not the same. That's not going to be held in escrow. It's non-refundable option money. So it can be paid out at that time. And so in the event that the buyer fulfills the purchase agreement, the option money does get credited towards the purchase price of the home. Now, the way that when they're doing 3% now, we're just going to use 3% as an example, because that's the minimum. I don't work with people that have less than the 3% down on lease purchases. So 1% of that is going to go to the seller. So if this is a $400,000 property, they're going to get $4,000. 1% goes to the buyer's agent. So it's $4,000 to the buyer's agent, 1% to the listing agents, $4,000 to the listing agent. Now, obviously, if you're representing both sides of the transaction, you get the 2%. As a facilitator, again, I do recommend bringing in another agent in your office to keep that separate. That way there's no confusion, especially when you get into things like lease purchases and options and things. You really do want to have a separate person representing each side. Most states don't even like facilitators, so it really depends on your state. But if the buyer does not fulfill the contract, they do not get their option money back. And you need to make that abundantly clear to everybody. This is non-refundable. That's why it's called option money. They have the option to purchase. It's not earnest money. So make sure you're very clear on that. So how do you find properties that are willing to lease purchase? That is the magic question, right? Only our students get that information, and I will be adding a section to the course before the end of the year that goes into great detail on how to discover these properties, but they are easier to find than you think. Finding the buyers is even easier. They're everywhere. So the real questions are, do they have 3 to 5% down? Why don't they qualify for a loan? How will they qualify in 2 years? What happens if they destroy the property? What happens if they stop making the monthly payments? What is the true benefit to the seller for offering their property this way? So while these are all great questions, I am almost out of time on tonight's training, so I'm not going to be able to cover them all. However, I will address all of these in detail in the course. So these are some reasons why a seller might purchase a property. So I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. So I'm going to give you a little bit more information on this. So here are some reasons a seller may be open to offering their home as a lease purchase option to someone with less than perfect credit. They have to relocate for a job and they don't have time to get the house ready to sell, and they'd rather rent and sell later. They recently bought the home and they don't have enough equity. They need more time to pay down principal and want to take advantage of increased prices in 2 years. You're going to see this as your number one reason for all these people that overpaid for their houses and they cannot sell them for payoff on the open market because prices have gone down. They're going to be forced to do something like this. And that's going to be your number one reason. They are indifferent about selling or renting. They're fine either way. They would rather rent than sell and are banking on the buyer not being able to qualify in 2 years and getting them to keep the 1% they received out of the option money and do it all over again in 2 years while their home value increases and the principal's going down. There are people who are historically do lease purchases for this reason, because what's happening is they're getting that cash injection every 2 years and knowing in the back of their mind, there's a pretty good chance this person's not going to fulfill this contract. I'm going to get to keep that money. In the meantime, they're paying down my principal and the property's going up in value. And then if the buyer actually gets their credit straight like they're supposed to and they purchase, they're okay with that too, because at the end of the day, they get the equity. So there's some people who actually go into it with that mindset. Another reason is the home needs too many repairs, and a lease purchase candidate is fine with taking on a fixer upper because they're just glad to not be renting anymore. They're perfectly okay with that. So a lot of times they go into this property, they pay 3 to 5% to get in. They end up spending another $5,000 to $10,000 fixing it up the way they want it. Nowhere in their mind are they thinking that they're not going to buy this property, and they're going to do everything they can to buy it. And that's what you want, that once they're vested in it, they are going to do everything you tell them to do to get their credit repaired to be able to qualify in 2 years, because they don't want to lose their money. Nobody does. So that's a really good incentive for them to get that to be able to qualify. And that ensures that you get the closing too. So that's a good thing for everyone. Another reason why a seller might lease purchase a property is they're on the verge of losing the house anyway, and they have no equity, and they're just rolling the dice, and they're getting that 1%, and they're moving on to their next property. And as long as that buyer's making that payment every month and they're sending it into the mortgage company, everything's fine. They close in 2 years, great. The seller gets a little bitty check and then they're done with it. So they really don't have a whole lot of risk involved at that point, because if for some reason the buyer does default, well, the seller was going to lose the house anyway. So they're willing to take that risk in the hopes the buyer fulfills the contract. So these are reasons a buyer might want to lease purchase a home. You may automatically assume that a buyer wants to do a lease purchase because they have bad credit. Well, that is the number one reason. It is not the only reason. So here are a few reasons a buyer would prefer lease purchasing a home. They're waiting out of bankruptcy and they can't qualify at the moment. So they may have perfect credit. Otherwise, they may have had a bankruptcy, got their credit back up. They make good money, but they don't meet the time requirement on the bankruptcy. I literally saw this with a guy, an MTV executive that moved to Nashville from Georgia. He had perfect credit before the market crashed. He had never went late on his mortgage, and he needed to relocate for his job, and he could not sell his house for payoff because the market had dipped down so low below what his home was worth that he couldn't sell it for payoff, and he didn't want to pay the difference. So when he contacted the bank and said, hey, this is what's going on, I got to relocate, I owe more than the house is worth, yada yada, they instructed him to go late so that they could do a short sale. That's what the bank told him to do. So now he had the short sale on his credit, which was, it had to season out at the time. The qualification was you couldn't have a short sale in the last 2 years. And so that had to season out. And so the only thing he could do was a lease purchase, because he didn't want to rent. He didn't want to throw his money away. So he found him a property that him and his wife loved. He put $10,000 down. He lease purchased it for 2 years. Short sale seasoned out. His credit and debt ratios were perfect. Otherwise, he bought a house. So there are sometimes situations, it's not just bad credit is the reason why. They recently moved to the area. I'm not 100% sure they want to be in that exact location, but they don't want to rent. They recently started their own business and will need 2 years tax returns to average their income to qualify. They have good credit. They've paid their bills on time. They make good money, but the lenders require 2 years tax returns when you're self-employed. So this is a big one. I've seen this one a lot. They recently went through a divorce, or they just separated and they don't want property in their name just yet, and they don't want to rent. I see that one a lot. They have an IRS debt that they're repaying and they will not qualify until it's paid back. If somebody has a huge IRS debt, a lien per se, they're not going to be able to qualify. The lender's going to deny it because they don't want the IRS slapping a lien on the property. And they don't want the mortgage lender always wants to be first lien holder. They're tired of renting and they want to try out home ownership. So it's a great way to dip their toe in the water, right? A little bit silly way to do it, but I've seen that. And they want the benefits of home ownership, and they don't want to move their family again in 2 years when they do qualify. So they'd rather go ahead, buy the house now, instant gratification, work on their credit, do what they need to do to qualify in 2 years. Then it's officially theirs and they don't have to move. So all of these are very good reasons other than bad credit. So can you really make money as a lease purchase agent? So I like using this $400,000 average price point, because most people are going to be close to that anyway. If the average home price is $400,000 in your market, you're going to make a quick $4,000 each time you structure a lease purchase deal. You can do 1 a month or 10 a month. There is no lack of buyers wanting to do these type of deals. Your biggest challenge will be finding the homes, which really won't be much of an issue here shortly. It's pretty much here already in some areas. So 2 of these deals per month can make the average agent 6 figures a year. And you don't have to wait 30 to 45 days or 2 years for the closing either. So these type transactions can be structured in as little as 24 hours, but typically do take about 3 to 5 days because you're bouncing things back and forth. And you get paid as soon as the check clears with your broker. So don't forget, in 2 years, as these contracts start maturing, you are going to have a steady flow of closings consistently. So if you do it right, about half of the deals will close on time. That's an additional $8,000 each time a deal closes in this above example. If your average home price is 400,000, if it's more, then it's going to be more. If it's less, obviously, you know how to do the math. You know how to calculate your commissions. So what will the lease purchase module include? So if you're already a client of ours, like I said before, you're grandfathered in. So the new lease purchase module will not cost you anything extra, but it's going to include verbiage to write in your contracts and addendums to cover all bases, how to find properties and sellers for the lease purchase program, ad copy to generate sellers and buyers for your program, flyers to give out explaining the program in detail. You can send these, you can email them, you can give them to them in person, however you want. Instructions on how to structure the deal with the current forms, training on how to get paid now and later when it closes. And we're going to actually share our landing pages with you for the sellers and buyers. So you're going to want to capture that information as they come in off of the ad copy. So we're going to share those landing pages with you, plus a lot more. I'm literally going to spill the beans on all the ins and outs on the lease purchase program. I barely scratched the surface tonight. There's lots of goodies. Gets really fun and interesting when we get into how to uncover the properties. I actually had sellers reaching out to me, asking me if I would put their home in my lease purchase program because they wanted to do a lease purchase, because that was the best option for them at that time. Actually had a lady who was moving to Florida. Her children had a disease. She had adopted 4 children from Africa, and they had some sort of blood disease where they needed to be in a warmer climate. I don't remember what it was called, but they had to move to Florida, and they literally basically owed payoff. You know, the house was worth what their payoff was, and she wanted to rent, but she didn't really want to rent. And she thought, you know, lease purchase might be a step above renting, because now you're going to get somebody in the home that has that pride of home ownership. Like they in their mind, this is my home. I'm going to own this home in the next 2 years. So it's a little bit better quality person in the home. And then she got that initial injection, cash injection up front from the option money. So in some cases, the sellers actually prefer this over their other options. I had another guy who I did a lease purchase, and the 2 years was up, and the buyer did not qualify and decided that he didn't want to renew again. And the seller was so pleased with how it went that he's like, "Can we do it again?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I've got a list of over 1,000 people looking for homes. Yeah, we can do it again." And he just loved doing lease purchases. He was sold on it. So it is a good way to help people, especially with the up and coming things that we're going to be facing as agents. So marketing yourself and your service is crucial to your success. Sometimes you have to reinvent yourself to stay relevant in today's market. And sometimes you just have to flip the board over and start again. Sometimes all you need is one little tip, one little tweak, and you're off to the races again. So I hope that you guys have picked up something tonight that will help you stay afloat over the next season in real estate.